16, the title of the chapter was, was it Gunatraya Vibno? The Daivashura Sampat Vibhaga Yoga was the chapter title. So if we go through last section of the Bhagavad Gita, so starting from chapter 13, that we are in this prison house of material nature, Prakriti. We're trapped here. And if we understand the relationship between ourselves, the Lord, and Prakriti, then we can also figure our way out of this restrictive environment for us, which is like a jail cell. And in that regard, in chapter 13, Krishna says, I reside within every one of you as the Paramatma, and not just within all of the human beings, but he pervades the entire material cosmos, every single atom. He enters into every single atom. So he says, if you recognize my presence in you, you can use me as the guide to get out of this prison. So that was that Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga. Then in chapter 14, which was the Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga, Krishna talks about what is actually holding us back. This material world has no necessarily like a physical wall or physical chains that are holding you back. The only chains or the bars that are holding you back is the Sattvagun, Rajagun, and Tamagun. And Krishna says in chapter 14, one is I'm ready to guide you in chapter 13 from within. In chapter 14, he says, how do you break down those 3 bars? How do you transcend those 3 bars? Which is what he asks Arjuna to do in the end, that you need to even go above the Sattvagun stage, which is called the transcendental platform or the Vishuddha Sattva platform. And then in chapter 15, which was titled Purushottama Yoga, the Lord says, okay, now you know what is actually holding you back, which is these 3 bars. Once you've gone beyond the 3 bars, you still need to figure out what is your destination. First, you conquer the 3 bars. Take care of that first. Now you need to find your way to the door that is going to get you out of this prison. The door that is, your destination is that door to exit the material world. So the escape plan is the GPS. And the escape plan is the Vedas. So if you follow the Vedic scriptures, ultimately you will come to the realization that the essence of all life is to serve Vishnu. So this was chapter 15. And in chapter 15, Krishna talked about the Nitya Siddhas and the Nitya Baddhas. And in chapter 16, within the Nitya Baddha category of Jivatmas, who have exited and separated themselves from the spiritual realm and come in contact with the material realm, he says there are 2 kinds of personalities, those that are divine and those that are demoniac. So Krishna says in the first 3 shlokas, he talks about the divine qualities, and then he says, I've anyway spoken about this at length in great detail. And we quickly saw, like from chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 6, 10, 12, 13, 14, Krishna has been emphasizing divine qualities. So in chapter 16, Krishna was warning us that in any prison there are going to be inmates. And even though we are prisoners, Even among the prisoners, there can be better prisoners and worse prisoners from a quality standpoint. So, inmates was what he was telling us we need to be cautious about. Essentially, meaning we need to worry about who we associate with. Now, the only problem is we ourselves are carrying demoniac natures within us. How can we avoid ourselves? It's difficult to avoid yourself, right? You have to learn to live with yourself. So, Krishna then talks in detail about how these demoniac qualities actually arise in us and what is the uh, activities of those who engage in demoniac activities. What do they do? What is their conduct? What is their behavior? What's their philosophy in life? How do they look upon themselves? How do they look upon others? How they have a tendency to take advantage of situations, etc. Then in shlokas 19 to 22, Krishna talks about the consequences for such demoniac nature. They not only bring destruction on themselves, but they also bring destruction onto others. And then Krishna concludes by saying, we have a choice, all of us have a choice. We can either choose to be divine or we can choose to be demoniac. But the freedom to choose is ours. So in this context, we talked about nature, nurture, and culture. Nature is, Krishna says, yes, some qualities you're going to be born with based on your past karma and your past impressions. Certain things are nurtured that you yourself choose to nurture. You choose to feed a particular beast. Either it is the Rajagun or Tamagun or Satogun. It's your choice which beast you feed. Of course, of these three beasts, Satogun is the better, less evil of the three. And actually, Krishna also says that Sattvagun is a perfect platform for us to launch. It's like a launch pad for Bhakti Yoga. It's easier to adopt and take up Bhakti Yoga when you're in the Sattvagun stage. But that doesn't mean those who are in Tamogun and Rajogun cannot come to Bhakti Yoga. They can. They need the mercy of the Lord. If the Lord sends a devotee to connect with them, their entire life can be transformed. A person in the Tamogun needs to only chant Hare Krishna mantra once. Their entire life could be transformed. In that life or definitely in the next life. So nurture is what is it that you choose to cultivate. And culture is your surroundings. Who do you plan to spend maximum time with? And are you really observing your activities closely and understanding how others' association with others is ultimately influencing your personality, your behavior, your conduct? These things happen at a very subtle level. It's not obvious. You know, there is no drunkard who wanted to become a drunkard. There is no smoker who was intending to smoke. But these three things, nature, nurture, and culture, actually shapes our personality. And Krishna finally says, the only option is you have to fall down at my lotus feet. So you can say, I don't believe in God, all of that, which is nice, I suppose, but ultimately you have no choice. So I was listening to Chaitanya Charan Prabhu's lectures and I came across some important points that I want to share with you. And yes, we have to remember that Krishna also spoke about the three gates of hell for us: lust, anger, and greed. If lust is not satisfied, it leads to anger. If lust is satisfied, it leads to greed. You just want more and more. So your appetite grows when you're frustrated at that it is not satisfied, and also when it is satisfied, your appetite grows. That's our nature. We don't give up, for all the wrong reasons. We don't give up. So, so Chaitanya Charan Prabhu was saying the following things. He was saying that, in the context of what is considered doctrine and practice, right? There is something that's called dogma, which is a particular school of thought, a particular philosophy. And then there is actually practice. So he was talking about how, that there is a difference between what we believe in and what we actually practice. And a lot of the times, the two of them may never align. You may have your set of belief systems. So you have your religious beliefs, but then you have your functional ideology. So, he was using the terms doxy and praxy. The word doxy, like orthodoxy, it's a particular school of thought. So what you believe in versus what you practice. And what he was saying is that ultimately Krishna is saying, without God being in the center, transformation is simply not possible. And he was talking about how the Bhagavad Gita actually is a tool for us. It's a resource for us to observe reality. Observation first and then action. So Prabhu was saying that if you're not observing and you're constantly acting, that is not acting, that is actually just reacting to the situation. Sometimes just like a knee-jerk reaction or an instinctive reaction, you just react to situations. You don't take the time to sit back and look at the situation. There is this belief in psychology, right? For those who have a problem with anger management, they are advised by the psychologists, whenever you come across situations that are that instigates the anger within you, they say either count to 10 before you open your mouth so that you can exercise some self-control, or walk away from the situation if it is feasible for you to just walk away from that situation so that you can introspect. So I actually see this in the corporate world quite often. People will see an email and then just quickly they just respond, because they have read meanings into the other person's sentences, and before they know it, they've started this chain reaction of acrimony and fighting on emails. You're like this, you're like that, like that. So we must always introspect, take time to respond to situations. Otherwise, we are going to put ourselves in a heck of a lot of troublesome situations. And that the Shastras are provided as a path for us to elevate ourselves. It gives you a framework with which you can observe and then act. And he was also explaining very nicely, which I had not heard about before, but that Shastras are not uniform. I think somebody asked this question, right? Is it rigid? Is it very black and white? It's not. And he was giving examples, or he was giving analogies. So for example, he was saying, for those who are in the Sattva Gun state, for them, the requirements are a little bit more stringent. The rules and regulations are a little bit more stringent. For those who are in Rajagun, the rules are little relaxed because they are not ready to come to that platform. And similarly, for those who are on the Tamagun stage, it's not that the outcome is equal. That is not what he was saying. He was saying that the Shastras are not uniform, they are omniform, which means there is a solution for every kind of disease in the Shastra. So he was explaining how, if one is in the mode of goodness, and you use this analogy of disease, so anybody in the mode of goodness could be considered to have a mild infection. Anybody who is in the mode of passion should be considered to have a severe infection. And finally, he said that for those who are in the mode of ignorance, they have a lethal infection. So everybody is infected. Level of infection varies based on the guna that is influencing. But nevertheless, the solutions are there in the Shastra, irregardless of the severity of the infection. So he was saying that the scripture are scriptures, the Bhagavad Gita, the Vedas, has a solution for everyone. Even if you're a demon, it has a solution. You know, Prabhupada always said that the ISKCON temples are like hospitals where you go for spiritual treatment. You go to the ISKCON temple for spiritual treatment. And slowly, by associating with other devotees and following the simple ABCD principle or the formula, you can begin the process of curing your various forms of infections. And he was talking about how the summary of this entire chapter is actually in the 14th verse of the 16th chapter. So let me just pull that up really quickly. So the 14th verse, Krishna says, this is chapter 16, right? Ashaumaya hata shatruhu hanishye chaparan api ishvaroham aham bogi siddhoham balavan sukhi. That, you know, reading all the three shlokas together. The demoniac person thinks, so much wealth do I have today, and I will gain more according to my schemes. So much is mine now, and it will increase in the future more and more. He is my enemy, and I have killed him. And my other enemies will also be killed. I am the Lord of everything. I am the enjoyer. I am perfect, powerful, and happy. I am the richest man surrounded by aristocratic relatives. There is none so powerful and happy as I am. I shall perform sacrifices. I shall give some charity, and thus I shall rejoice. So Krishna is saying, in this way, such persons are deluded by ignorance. So Prabhuji summarized this one shloka as follows. Ambition divorced from ethics leads to greed. So if I had to use Sanskrit terminology, artha divorced from dharma leads to anartha. When we talked about this concept of anartha nivriti, we understood that the word anartha means things that are of no use. And anartha nivriti means giving up things that are useless for you in this life on the path of spirituality. To abandon those things that are really not going to help us in any way, shape, or form. Now, the word artha means something that has a purpose. So, purpose divorced from dharma, you could say dharma is a code of conduct, leads to purposelessness. Artha and anartha. Artha divorced from dharma leads to anartha. Now, artha also means wealth, economics. That means anartha means greed, excessive greed. Or anartha could also, that excessive greed leads to degradation of prosperity and wealth. So ambition divorced from ethics, for those of us who are working and in the corporate world, this is the good thing to remember. Ambition divorced from ethics leads to greed and destruction of self as well as others. So a demoniac person is only thinking about himself, right? I can gain more wealth, I can gain more. But in the process, he doesn't realize that he is actually destroying not just himself, but society itself. So I thought that was a wonderful way to conclude chapter 16. Ambition, ultimately, ambition divorced from ethics leads to greed and destruction of self and others. So that just now brings us to chapter 17. So before we begin, let's see what is the chapter title. Shraddhatraya Vibhaga Yoga. Translation is the divisions of faith. So before we begin, let's offer our humble obeisances to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Ajnana-Timirandasya Jnana-Jala-Shalakaya Chakshur Umilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishram Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuda Padakamalam Sri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakanutamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpadarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschyata Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gauravakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Are you all able to see the screen?
Yes, Mataji.
Yes, Mataji.
You are able to see that 1, 2, 3, 4?
Yes, Mataji.
Okay, all right. So in chapter 17,
we can see the screen, Mataji.
you are able to see it? Okay. So in chapter 16, Krishna has talked about divine. Those who are divine follow the scriptures. Those who are not divine do not follow the scriptures, do not accept the scriptures. So if you look at faith as a contonym, yes and no. Yes, I accept the Lord. No, I do not accept the Supreme Lord. On the left-hand side is divine, on the right-hand side is demoniac. Arjuna has an interesting question. He says, you have spoken about two kinds of people. Those who believe in the scriptures, those who have faith in the scriptures and follow the scriptures, those who believe in the Supreme Lord, or at least believe in the demigods and are worshipping the demigods. Because even those who worship demigods are considered devotees of the demigods, and indirectly devotees of Krishna. And you've spoken about the demoniac who don't follow the scriptures. Arjuna has a question. He says, what about those who are in between the two? What about those who do not believe in the scriptures, They are not demons either. But they have faith. But their faith is based on other things that has nothing to do with the scriptures. What about them? So that's how chapter 17 begins. What about those people who fall in between these two categories? In answer to this question, Krishna talks in detail, coming back to how the gunas influence certain characteristics and behavior. So such faith, one can assume, could be based on, say, just family tradition that has nothing to do with scriptures. Such faith could be based on sentiments alone, nothing to do with scriptures. Arjuna is asking, where do these people fall? Are they demons or are they divine? So Krishna is going to use, so if you look at the three modes, Rajagun, Sattvagun, Rajagun and Tamagun, and then he's going to use 4 primary criteria to evaluate such people. One is their eating habits. Of course, Krishna talks about their worship and faith as well. We'll set that aside right now. Their eating habits, what kind of foods do they eat? Then he comes to the 3 things that all of us are supposed to do all the time. Yajna, Dhana and Tapa. Even sannyasis are supposed to do this. So this Yajna, Dana, Tapa must be done by every human being in society. Every human being. We must practice and offer some sacrifice. But that sacrifice is going to be dictated by which guna you're under the influence of. We must offer charity for the welfare of society, but that charity, the kind of charity that you do, is dictated by which guna you're under the influence of. Then tapa, austerity. All of us must practice some austerity. But the kind of austerity that you choose to practice is based on the guna that you're under the influence of. And what are the types of food that you eat is dictated by the guna that you're under the influence of. Right? So Krishna will use this matrix of the 3 gunas influencing the food that we eat, the kind of worship that we do, the kind of sacrifices that we perform, the kind of charity that we give, and the kind of austerities that we observe. And then we'll come to the concluding final shloka, what Krishna says at the very end. So the acronym for today is FACE, faith, austerities, charity, and Krishna comes back to how ultimately he is the enjoyer of everything. So this chapter is titled Shraddhatraya Vibhaga Yoga. What does Shraddha mean?
Faith, Mataji.
Faith. So the single word summary for today is, you have listened to Krishna, you have accepted him as Paramatma, you have understood the 3 bars and how to transcend them. You have understood the importance of the Vedas. If you're not a devotee of the Lord, you've understood the importance of the Vedas, so that acts as your GPS to help you out. You've understood the nature of the inmates residing in this prison. You've conquered all of that. You're at that door to that prison, somebody needs to unlock the door to get you out. You need a key to unlock the door. That key is faith. So single word summary for today's chapter is key. What key is going to help you unlock that door? Faith. Faith in the scriptures and faith in the Lord. So let's. Arjuna Vacha Ye Shastra Vidim Ustrijya Jajante Shraddhayanvitaha Tesham Nishtatu Ka Krishna Sattvam Maho Rajastamaha. So this is the question Arjuna is asking. Arjuna inquired, "O Krishna, what is the situation of those who do not follow the principles of scripture but worship according to their own imagination? Are they in goodness? Are they in passion, or are they in ignorance?" So, even among us here today, some of us may be practicing things that has nothing to do with the scriptures. Either it was a family tradition, or it is something you decided you wanted to do on your own. And you've been following it faithfully. So if you've been doing that, you will understand what Krishna's conclusion is at the end of this chapter. What he thinks about them. Krishna's reply: if one does not follow the Vedas, one will follow the natural instincts, which will be in goodness, passion, or ignorance. So who are these three brothers?
Vibhishan, Ravan, and Kumbhakar.
And therefore, which guna do each of them represent?
Sattva, Tamas, and Raj.
Vibhishan is spiritual, Ravan is demonic.
Mataji, Vibhishan is Sattvic Gun and Ravana is Tamsic and Kumbhakarna is Rajasic.
No, Ravana is Rajo.
Sorry,
Kumbhakarna
Ravana is
Tamsic.
Rajasic and Kumbhakarna is Tamsic. Thank you.
Ravana is Rajasic, right? He wants more.
Yes. Yes.
More wealth, more power, more. Always active.
Yes, Mataji.
Mode of ignorance is sleep. In the same family. Three different gunas. So Krishna will now talk about those who have faith, but their faith is not based on the scriptures. They are doing whatever they believe in. Whatever they have concocted in their mind, they are following through. Now Krishna is saying, even here, you will have people in the mode of goodness who have no interest in the scriptures. They will be performing certain activities, right? How are they being influenced under the mode of goodness? Similarly, those under the mode of passion, those under the mode of ignorance. And then Shuddha Sattvas, we don't need to worry. These are the devotees of the Lord. So lifestyles in the three modes primarily, which is devoid of faith in the scriptures and faith in God. Which means you come up with your own practices. It doesn't matter. Yeah. So faith and worship, food, sacrifice, conduct, speech, and mind control. So in shlokas 1 to 7, Krishna talks about faith and worship. So let's see what is Krishna saying. Yajante satvika devan yaksha rakshamsi rajasaha Pretan bhuta ganams chanye yajante tamasa janaha. Krishna is telling Arjuna, men in the mode of goodness worship the demigods. Those in the mode of passion worship the demons. And those in the mode of ignorance worship ghosts and spirits. Remember, these are people who may not follow the scriptures at all. But generally, those in the mode of goodness may or may not be worshipping demigods. But the general symptom is that if you are worshipping the demigod, you must be in the mode of goodness. At least you are following the scriptures. Those in the mode of passion worship the demons, and those in the mode of ignorance worship ghosts and spirits. And then Krishna talks about, he comes back to this topic of food, which he had covered in chapter 14. Food in the three modes. So Krishna says that those who are in the mode of goodness eat wholesome, juicy, pleasing food items that results in long life and purification. It gives them strength, it keeps them disease-free, and it brings them happiness. For people under the modes of passion, they have a preference for foods that are very bitter or very sour, very hot, very pungent, burning, very spicy actually. Very spicy food is considered to be in the mode of passion. Sattvic food is very mildly spiced, or preferably no spice at all. Like for example, green chilies, red chilies and all are in the mode of passion. So if at all you want to add any spice to the dishes, black pepper is preferable in small quantities. So there are certain food items also that fall under various categories. So you may ask a question in ISKCON, do we not use green chilies and red pepper? Of course we do. But we are offering it to Krishna. So when we offer it to Krishna, the prasadam is on the Shuddha Sattva state. It's on the transcendental platform, so it doesn't apply there. But ideally, you will notice in every temple, the cooks, the initiated devotees who cook, they're very concerned that Krishna should not get anything very spicy. I know in our temple, the cooks, one of the cooks used to say, he's just a baby. Why do you want to put so much spice? That Giridhari is still a baby, he cannot handle spicy food. So this particular cook used to not put too much spice when he was cooking for the Lord. Because in his mind, he was connected with the Lord as still a very young child, just 5-year-old, 6-year-old child. So foods in the mode of ignorance, it is tasteless, it is decomposed. Of course, decomposed means meat and other items. Untouchable things, and it will result in disease and cause early death also. Right? So from shlokas 8 to 10, you can read about Krishna's statements about the foods. The best food, of course, is that which is under the Shuddha Sattva platform. Anything that is offered to Krishna as a sacrifice can be honored as prasadam, and such prasadam is considered pure, regardless of the spice levels. So in shlokas 11 to 13, Krishna talks about sacrifices. In shlokas 14 to 19, he talks about the various types of austerities, and in shlokas 20 to 22, Krishna talks about charity. So we'll now focus on these three. So let's begin with a little pastime from the Ramayana. There is a story of a Shudra called Shambhaka. So after Lord Ram wins the battle and he's now ruling, he used to have a bell outside his palace. Anybody could ring the bell to let him know that they want to speak with the Lord. So this provision was there that any citizen could ring the bell and get an audience with the king, with Lord Ram. One day, a Brahmana comes, rings the bell, and in his arms, he's holding the dead body of his young son. So in our Vedic scriptures, it is said that if the king, the head of the country, is leading a dharmic life and is governing in a dharmic way, then society will be very peaceful. It will not be too hot, it will not be too cold, there will not be diseases, there will not be any untimely deaths, etc., etc., etc. So imagine the role of a king is so important for the rest of the peace of society. Which means, how did this untimely death happen to this Brahmana's son? Everybody accepted that Lord Rama was a dharmic king. So why was there an untimely death? So he rings the bell to ask this question, to demand of Lord Ram, how are you actually ruling that such a thing has happened to me? So it was accepted that when something like this happened, the king was to blame. And Lord Rama meets with this Brahmana along with his dead son, and he's really puzzled. How could this happen under his rule? And who should come? Narada Muni comes. And Narada Muni tells Lord Ram, my dear Lord Ram, there is a reason this has happened. In your kingdom, there is a Shudra by the name Shambhaka, who's doing a great deal of austerity. He is the cause of this untimely death of the son of the Brahmana, the young child of the Brahmana. And Lord Rama immediately begins to meditate. When he meditates, the Pushpaka Vimana comes. He boards the Pushpaka Vimana and he heads south until he reaches the place where the Shambhaka is. He gets off the Pushpaka Vimana, and what does he see? Shambhaka is hanging upside down, doing tapas. Severe austerity he is practicing. So Lord Ram asks him, who are you? Shambhaka says, I am a Shudra. And Lord Ram asks, what are you doing? Shambhaka says, I am doing tapas. And then Lord Ram asks, why? What do you want? Why are you doing this severe austerity? And then Shambhaka says, I want to become the next Indra. To do that, I have to practice austerity. And as if to add insult to injury, he tells Lord Ram, I not only want to defeat Indra and kick him out of Devloka, but I also want to enjoy myself with his wife Sachi. That's what he tells Lord Ram. So Lord Ram kills him on the spot. No questions asked anymore. He got the answers that he wanted. Lord Ram beheads him. And Lord Ram boards the Pushpaka Vimana, comes back to the palace. The Brahmana's son has come alive again. So you may ask, two totally unrelated activities. How do you explain this? What's the connection between the death of the Brahmana's son and this ignorant person performing some severe austerities that are not at all authorized in the scriptures? What's the connection between it? How can killing the Shudra revive the life of the son of the Brahmana? This is how the Acharyas explain it. When you do tapas out of your own concoction, when you come up with things that you want to do, because you believe it will please whoever, there's nothing in the Shastras that talks about such severe austerity. That one cannot be allowed to practice such austerities that are not authorized in the scriptures. When such things happen, the king has to put an immediate stop to it. So, which means outside of the king's role and responsibility, each of us also have a role and responsibility, not only for our own well-being, but also for the well-being of humanity. So we are living in a community and we need to be aware of that. What we do impacts others. So if faith is not based on scriptures, then Krishna says the faith is going to be dictated by these modes. So according to scriptures, and you can read the purport written by Srila Prabhupada for the shlokas. It is there in the purport for the Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada explains in the purport that the scriptures authorize the worship of 5 gods, the Pancha Upasana, they're called. 5 deities for worship: Vishnu, Surya Dev, Lord Shiva, Durga Devi, and Lord Ganesh. These 5 deity worship is sufficient for those in the mode of goodness.
Can you repeat once again, Mataji?
Lord Vishnu, Surya Dev, Lord Shiva, Durga Devi, and Lord Ganesh. For those in the mood of goodness and who want material benefits, they can worship these 5 demigods. And Krishna has said that those in the mode of goodness worship the demigods, those in the mode of passion worship demons. And Prabhupada was actually giving an example that in his days when he was there, when World War II was going on and Hitler was in power in Germany, that somebody in Kolkata had created a statue of Hitler and was worshipping Hitler. And if I'm not mistaken, the same thing has happened with Donald Trump in India. Somebody had created a vigraha, whatever, murti of Donald Trump and were worshipping it. This is worship in the mode of passion. Nothing in the Shastras about this kind of worship. Then Krishna talks about those in the mode of ignorance, they worship ghosts and spirits. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this Preta and Bhuta so that you have a better understanding. So this is actually there in the Garuda Purana. So this is what happens at the time of death. So in our culture, the 13th day is very important for us. Yeah. And there's a reason behind it. Day 1 is the day of death. That is considered as day 1. So Bhuta means generally those who have committed suicide. What happens? They have given up their gross body. What is remaining is the soul and the subtle body. Because they took their own life, the punishment that they have to face is they are not given another gross body unless something else, some other intervention happens. So what happens with the Bhutas is that although they are in the subtle body and the soul is with the subtle body, they still experience hunger, thirst, etc. But they are unable to satisfy it because they don't have a gross body. So sometimes the Bhutas will enter the bodies of those who are predominantly under the mode of ignorance and try to satisfy their hunger and thirst by possessing human beings who are under the mode of ignorance. So these are Bhutas. Pretas. Bhutas are ghosts, Pretas are spirits. So now we'll understand what is the difference between ghosts and spirits, because those are the two words that Lord Krishna uses in the shloka. So this is what happens when you die. Day 1 is death. There is 12-day observance of ceremony, and 13th day is considered a celebration, asking the soul to go on. Don't be attached to your body. Don't be attached to your family. Take on a new body. Understand that you're not part of this whatever family anymore. Go in peace and occupy the next body. So it is giving. So this is what happens. For a Preta, day 1 after death, there is just soul and the subtle body. Subtle body means mind, intelligence, and ego. For those 12 days, if everything is performed as per Shastras, as per Karma Kanda, where you are giving Pindadan every day, rice balls and water. How can this Preta accept that food? Because it doesn't have a gross body anymore. So the Garuda Purana says, for those who died a natural death, the body acquires, the soul acquires a transition body, a temporary body to accept this food offerings being made by the family members. For those 12 days, it has this body. If everything is performed as per the Shastras and done properly, on the 13th day, it gets a new body. Or on the 13th day, it will go to the Pitruloka and wait for its next body, if the body is not decided. So which means for those 12 days, this Jivatma gets a transition body so that it can accept the food and the tarpan that is being performed for those 12 days. So this is a spirit, Preta. So everyone goes through this except devotees. There's always an exception criteria for devotees. Okay, so what happens to devotees then? Day 1. You don't have to wait for the 12-day period if you're a devotee. Day 1. Either you achieve liberation you've gone back to the spiritual world, or you've taken on the next body. No waiting period for devotees. So this day 1 to day 12 is for those who are not devotees of Lord Krishna. Because this is the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas. The Vedas themselves are divided by the gunas. I'm sure most of you may not be aware of this. There is a section of the Vedas that is specifically meant for those in the mode of goodness. There is a section of the Vedas that is specifically meant to be followed by those under the mode of passion. And there is a section of the Vedas that is meant for those who are in the mode of ignorance. So, as Chaitanya Charan Prabhu was saying, for every kind of disease, there is a solution in the Vedas. So, for devotees, after day 1, we take birth in another Vaishnava family. So, now we'll come to the importance of Tulasi just briefly. So, one day Yamaraj told his dutas, the servants of Yama are known as Yamadutas, the servants of Vishnu are known as Vishnu Dutas. So one day, Yamaraj tells his dutas, he gives them a particular address, physical location, etc., etc. Go there, grab that person and come. Grab that person means what? Death, right? So the Yamadutas go. They come to this place and they're like, what is this? There is no house at all here. There's no house, there's no sign of any living entity in this place. We have come to this exact GPS location. Nothing is to be found there. So I think, let's go to the next door neighbor and pick that guy up and take him to Yamaraj. That's what they do. They go to the next door, pick up that person, take him to Yamaraj. Yamaraj says, what have you done? This is not the person I asked you to bring. You went to the wrong address. The Yamadutas tell Yama, Maharaj, that address you sent us to, nothing is there. Yamaraj says, what do you mean nothing is there? Yes, we're telling you. Nothing is there. So we thought maybe it's a mistake. We went to the neighbor and brought him. So Yamaraj says, Chalo, I need to check this out. This is interesting, intriguing. So Yamaraj comes back with the Yamadutas to that place where the Yamadutas had claimed there's no residence there. You asked us to bring somebody nobody's there. How could we bring somebody? There's a mistake in the GPS routing. Yamaraj starts laughing when he arrives at the location. Do you know why? There is a tulsi plant outside the house. So the Yamadutas, the tulsi plant emits a particular aura of protection. Therefore, the Yamadutas cannot see beyond the tulsi plant. So similarly, ghosts also cannot trouble people who are devotees. This is the power of the tulsi plant from Puranas. Now you understand why every house has a tulsi plant in the front yard. It's supposed to be in the front yard. You don't want Yamadutas to come. So if you don't want Yamadutas to come, what does it mean? Does that mean you're not going to die or what? Of course you're going to die. You want Vishnu Dutas to come and take you to either your next body or back to paradise. Yamaduta means you're not going to a particularly nice place. So similarly, the Lord Brahma, the very first plant he creates is the Amalaki plant, the Amla. So Amla also has divine potencies, not as potent as Tulsi Devi. So if you're in the mode of goodness, you're detached from the results. If you're in the mode of passion, you are attached to the fruits of the results. And if you're in the mode of ignorance, you're engaged in self-destruction and destruction of society. Right? So Krishna talks about sacrifices in the three modes. Vidihinam ashrishtanam mantrahinam madakshinam shraddha virahitam yajnam tamasam parichakshate. Krishna is saying, any sacrifice performed without regard for the directions of scriptures, without distribution of prasadam, without chanting of Vedic hymns, and without remuneration to the priests, and without faith, is considered to be in the mode of ignorance. So any sacrifice that you perform must be there in the Vedic scriptures. So one, it should meet all this criteria, Krishna said. It should be there in the Vedas. Mantras must be chanted. So for us, the Hare Krishna mantra is more than sufficient. No other mantra is necessary, which means the Vedic hymns must be chanted and must be chanted properly to get the result. Prasadam must be distributed after every sacrifice. The priests must be given remuneration. Must be. If the priests are not paid, the benefit goes to the priest who conducted the sacrifice. It is as simple as that. Finally, Krishna says, you must have faith while you're doing it. So this is, if you're not following any of this, then whatever sacrifice that you're performing is being performed in the mode of ignorance. So let's quickly look. If you're performing sacrifice in the mode of goodness, you're following the scriptures. You're doing it as a matter of duty. You are not doing it expecting a reward. Sacrifice in the mode of passion. You are following the scriptures, but you're doing it for a material outcome and or for the sake of pride. You want your name up there, broadcast saying such and such a person has sponsored this great yajna. This is sacrifice in the mode of passion. Sacrifice in the mode of ignorance, we just read. No scripture, no prasadam, no chanting of hymns, no remuneration to priests, zero faith. Then, conduct in the three modes. When you're in the mode of goodness, you do your duty and responsibilities. You worship. You follow the scriptures. If you're in the mode of passion, selfish desires, right? Like Ravana. It's not that Ravana did not know the Vedas. He was an expert. He was, after all, the son of a Brahmana. He was an expert in the Vedas, but came under the influence of Rajavan, got carried away. So those who are under the mode of passion, their conduct is, they are quite selfish, self-centered. And they have a great desire for self-glorification, praise, worship, etc. Conduct of those in the mode of ignorance, they unnecessarily torture themselves to get power for the purposes of destroying others. Hiranyaksh and Hiranyakashipu would be examples of practicing austerities under the mode of ignorance. Although technically they were petitioning Lord Brahma, a demigod. This is an interesting point. Speech, Krishna talks about. When we speak, we should speak. How do we speak under the different gunas? If you're under the mode of goodness, your speech is very pleasing, it is beneficial, it's truthful. If you're in the mode of passion, your speech, you are very, very diplomatic. You know how to craft your words to manipulate people's sentiments or to manipulate particular outcomes. Mode of passion also includes gossip. Gossip, the word in Sanskrit is prajalpa. Prajalpa is unnecessary talk. Speech in the mode of ignorance, filled with lies, agitation, harmful. So Krishna talks about these three characteristics of speech without which you should not speak at all. Satyam, Priyam, Hitam. So in this context, I like talking about these two stories. Socrates, a great philosopher. One day a man comes running to Socrates and tells him, I need to speak to you urgently because I have something very important to tell you. Do you know how many people do that to you? Very urgent, very important, I need to talk to you now. So Socrates says, okay, but before you share this information, can you answer a few of my questions? And that man says, yes, sure, certainly I will answer your questions. So first question Socrates asks is, is whatever you're about to tell me, is it the truth? And the man says, actually, not so sure. I just heard it from somewhere. Then Socrates asks this man the next question. Is what you're about to tell me, is it something nice? And then the man says, no, not really. It's not very nice. And then Socrates asks his final question, is what you're about to tell me, am I going to benefit from it? And the man thinks and says, actually, no, you're not going to be benefiting from it at all. So Socrates says, okay, thank you very much. Actually, I don't want to know what you have to say. Please keep going. So we must be careful what we allow ourselves to hear. There are always people who are ready to share all kinds of nonsense information with you or gossip with you that has no relevance, no importance, nothing to do with life or death. There are always people engaged in this kind of prajalpa, just carrying information. You know what, such and such a thing happened to the neighbor. They had a fight. Did you know what the husband said to the wife? Like this. There's no end to stories like this. We shouldn't lend our ears to such kind of conversations. So Krishna is saying speech should have three qualities. Satyam. Whatever you speak should be truthful. But when you speak the truth, you should speak it in such a way that it is pleasing. It doesn't turn the other person off. Speaking the truth is not the same as being harsh. I heard one devotee say, if you want to chastise another devotee and tell them that they're doing something wrong, please do it with a smile on your face. Force yourself not to be harsh. So, speech should be satyam, priyam, pleasing. Pleasing meaning the way this information is communicated, the person is receptive to it, especially if it is feedback. We were talking about the corporate world, right? It's very good instructions from Krishna here to follow. Hitam, it must be beneficial to them. If it doesn't fit these three criteria, it's better not to open your mouth. Because if you do open your mouth, then that means you're either under the mode of passion or under the mode of ignorance. So one day, a person speaks very harshly about somebody else. He doesn't even know this person. He just heard something. And you know how this Chinese whisper game is, right? You then add your own masala to it, or somebody misheard something, and before you know it, what actually happened and what is being what is going around the rumor mill is something completely different. So he approaches, he realizes that after he has made these statements, he finds out that everything that he said was untrue. So he feels bad and he thinks, my God, I made a mistake. What am I going to do? How can I make up for this mistake that I made? So he approaches a saintly person and he asks the saint, can you tell me how I can repair the situation? And the saint tells him, I have a activity for you. And he gives him a pillow with feathers in it. And he tells him, do one thing. You go to the middle of the town, cut open the pillow and empty the feathers and let the wind take it wherever it wants. Man is thinking, my God, what kind of activity is it? How is it beneficial to me? So he goes back to the saint and he tells him, yeah, I've done what you told me to do. I took the pillow, I opened it up, all the feathers, I let it out, and the saint asked, what happened to the feathers? And the man says, what do you think happened? The wind took them in all kinds of directions. So the saint said, do one thing. Go back, pick up all the feathers, put it back in the pillowcase and bring it back to me. Meaning, impossible to do that. The man said, are you crazy or what? You asked me to open the pillow and let out the feathers. The wind has carried them here and there. You are now asking me to do something that is impossible. Collect the feathers and put them back in the pillowcase and bring it back to you. So the saint said, now do you understand? The importance of what you say? So in the same way that you have spoken harshly and in anger, the words that you have spoken have already had their effect. You cannot take those words back. The damage is done. So Lord Krishna says how we live, how we speak, we should be very, very, very conscious of how this affects our life and others' lives as well. So mind under the three modes. Under the mode of goodness, it is satisfied and content. Under the mode of passion, it is dissatisfied and anxious. And under the mode of ignorance, the mind is always bewildered and under illusion. But if you simply follow the ABCD formula, then you need not worry. Your mind will eventually come under your control. Charity, this is an interesting topic actually. You can read the shlokas 20 to 22. So we've covered sacrifice, yajna, austerity, we'll come to in a minute. And this is dhana. So Krishna actually also talks about in shloka 12, the importance of austerity is you have to use your body, mind and speech in austerity. All three has to be used when you're practicing austerity, but as per scriptures. So charity in the mode of goodness, when you do charity out of the mode of goodness, you do it out of a sense of duty. You do not have any expectations. You do it in the proper place and time, right? Deha, kala, pata. Time, place, and circumstance has to be proper. And you give charity to a person who's worthy of receiving it and will use it properly. Charity in the mode of passion is when you expect some returns. You're doing it for your own sense gratification, and charity that is given grudgingly. So sometimes what will happen is, if you're out on the street asking for charity, you keep pestering one person, he says, no, 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 no. And somehow you're talking to them again and again, and they'll say, fine. To get rid of you, they will pull something out of their pocket and drop it in your charity box. That is charity in the mode of passion. Ignorance is charity given in an impure place, in proper time, and an unworthy person, and to an unworthy person. So I will talk about what Srila Prabhupada says in Srimad Bhagavatam about charity. So Prabhupada explains in Srimad Bhagavatam how charity actually works in this life and in the next life. In the sense, the results of the charity that you perform, how it can influence you in this life and in the next life. So if you give charity to a non-Brahmana, so let's say you give them $10, your return will be exactly $10, 1-to-1 ratio, equal. What you give is what you'll get back. Get back doesn't mean necessarily monetary. You'll get the benefits of it in equal proportion to what you gave. So that's if you give charity to a non-Brahmana, 1-to-1. What if someone's trying to be a Brahmana but not fully a Brahmana, not a qualified Brahmana? Well, if you give them $10, you will get back $20 as an outcome. 1:2, double. If you give charity to a qualified Brahmana, a bona fide Brahmana, equation is 1:1,000. So if you've given $1, your return is $1,000. So then Prabhupada says, if you give charity to devotees, someone who's a Veda Paraga, someone who's self-realized, somebody who's practicing Krishna consciousness, as per the Shastras, the benefit is unlimited. No ratio there. So one 10-rupee note in the hundi of Radha Krishna temple or Lakshmi Narasimha temple, you get unlimited benefits. So this is how charity works, based on who you give the charity to. So anything given in the service of Krishna and anything given in the service of Krishna's devotees, the results are unlimited. In such a situation, you don't have to worry about place, time, person. You're giving it to a devotee of the Lord, or you're giving it in the service of the Lord. So that is the benefit of performing charity in Krishna consciousness. So when you're performing charity in Krishna consciousness, you are in the Shuddha Sattva state, not in the mode of goodness. You're doing it to please the Lord. Datavyam iti yadhanam diyate nupakarine deshe kale cha patre cha tadhanam satvikam smritam. Charity given out of duty, without expectation of return, at the proper time and place, and to a worthy person, is considered to be in the mode of goodness. The problem for us is most of the times we don't know where our money is going. So many foundations knock on our doors for money. How do we know that they are utilizing it for the purposes that they have claimed it for? We don't know. Charity for Krishna conscious endeavors. The Lord is the bestower of all benediction. If someone gives something to the Lord, he is not the loser. He is the gainer by 1,000,000 times. This is what Prabhupada was saying about charity. If you give to Krishna, the benefit is unlimited. And then coming to the concluding shloka. So remember, we began by saying that Arjuna wanted to know if a person is neither divine nor demoniac. They have faith, but their faith is not based in scriptures. What is the outcome for them? So this is Krishna's conclusion. He has described how these individuals act based under the modes of nature, in the form of worship, in the form of the foods that they eat, the charity that they perform, the sacrifices that they do, the austerities that they observe. Concluding shloka. Ashraddhaya hutam dattam tapastaptam kritam chayat asad ityuchyate pata nachatat pretya no iha. Krishna says, anything done as sacrifice, charity, or penance without faith in the Supreme, O son of Pritha, is impermanent. It is called asat and is useless both in this life and the next. Krishna saying it's all nice that these people have faith in all kinds of other things, their own sentiments, their own self-concocted belief systems, their own understanding of what has been handed down generation from generation, their personal desires. Krishna says, whatever they're doing is useless. Better to follow the scriptures. So, if you want to offer charity, do it as per scriptures. If you want to perform sacrifices, do it as per scriptures. If you want to observe austerity, do it as per scriptures. Don't do things that are not there in the scriptures. If you don't know, ask somebody. A lot of people, Prabhupada says, a lot of politicians will go on hunger strike. Prabhupada says such austerity of torturing the body for no spiritual outcome is in the mode of ignorance. It is not authorized in the Shastras. So we'll just go quickly to the shlokas because I want to, and there's one more. I'll come to this in a minute. I just want to read because there is a phrase that I need to cover. Om Tat Sat, that is the key. So what was that? 23. Yes, Shloka 23. You can read the purport a little later. Krishna says, from the beginning of creation, the three words Om Tat Sat were used to indicate the supreme absolute truth. These 6 symbolic representations were used by Brahmanas while chanting the hymns of the Vedas and during sacrifices for the satisfaction of the Supreme. What does this Om Tat Sat mean? Remember, we have already read in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, I am the transcendental sound vibration, Om. Every auspicious activity that we ever undertake begins with the syllable Om. Om is an invocation of the divine Krishna or Lord Vishnu. That's what the word or the syllable Om represents. Invocation of divine. The word Tat means that reality that is beyond me, that is above me. So Om means invocating the presence of Lord Vishnu. Let's just put it in a simple terminology. The minute you use the word Om, you're calling out to Lord Vishnu. Lord Vishnu, please be present here. The word Tat means you are renouncing everything on the material platform and invoking the presence of the spiritual, of a higher power, of higher authority. And the word Sat we understood anyway to mean eternal. It references all of the sacrifices that we are making. We are telling the Lord Vishnu that all of this is yours, nothing belongs to me. I am surrendering myself to you. So this is the meaning of the word Om Tat Sat. In other words, you are acknowledging that you have faith in the Supreme Lord Vishnu, and everything that you're doing it to please him. So Krishna is referencing this, saying Brahmanas do this. Anything auspicious, anything that they do, they use the three words Om Tat Sat. Meaning, the Lord, my dear Lord, everything belongs to you. I am surrendering to you. I am acknowledging you. I am offering myself to you. So the key we said is faith. The single word summary for today's chapter is key. And what is the key? One must have faith. And this faith is represented by Om Tat Sat. I accept the supreme truth. I surrender to the supreme truth. Which means you're no longer on the material platform. So now Krishna talks about transcendentalists, those who are his devotees. Every chapter Krishna concludes, again he'll bring it back to his devotees. Therefore, transcendentalists undertaking performances of sacrifice, charity, and penance in accordance with scriptural regulations begin always with Om to attain the supreme. What does it mean? Simply it means as devotees of the Lord, we are anyway doing everything to please the Lord. Whatever results that we get, we offer it back to the Lord in his service. That's it. Without desiring fruitive results, one should perform various kinds of sacrifice, penance, and charity with the word Tat. Now this is actual action, right? Tat means you're now renouncing everything. The purpose of such transcendental activities is to get free from material entanglement. The absolute truth is the objective of devotional service, and it is indicated by the word Sat. What is your ultimate objective? Eternity. You want to go back to the supreme eternal person, Purushottama. The performer of such sacrifice is also called Sat, as are all works of sacrifice, penance, and charity, which, true to the absolute nature, are performed to please the supreme person. This is Yajna, Dhana, Tapa in the mode of Shuddha Sattva state. Everything done to please Krishna, Lord Krishna. And then the last shloka, anything done as a sacrifice, charity, or penance without faith in the Supreme or Son of Pritha is impermanent. It is called Asat. Useless both in this life and in next life. So this is a shloka that is referenced. Sattvam Vishuddham Vasudeva Shabditam Yadiyate Tatra Puman Apavritaha Sattve cha Tasmin Bhagavan Vasudevo Shadokshajo Me Namasa Videyate. Translation. I am always engaged in offering obeisances to Lord Vasudeva in pure Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is always pure consciousness in which the Supreme Personality of Godhead, known as Vasudeva, is revealed without any covering. This is a shloka from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 3, verse 23. So, in Chapter 3 of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, you can read it. It's on the Veda base. It is a conversation between Lord Shiva and his consort Sati. That shloka that we just read is Lord Shiva instructing Sati Devi on the importance of surrendering to Lord Vishnu. In the context of Srimad Bhagavatam, here what happens is Sati finds out through the rumor mill that her father Daksha is going to perform a great sacrifice. Somehow or the other, her father does not like Lord Shiva. And he doesn't bother to invite his son-in-law and his daughter to this yajna. And Sati is so upset and so obsessed. So she's trying to convince Lord Shiva, I want to go and I want you to come with me. And Lord Shiva tells her, don't do this. Don't do this. Anyway, in that context, there are conversations happening between Lord Shiva and Sati, and that shloka that we just read actually comes towards the end of this chapter. You know, where he's trying to tell her in different ways why it is inappropriate for both of them to go, let alone she shouldn't go, and he also definitely he does not want to. But you know, the will of a woman sometimes. She manages to convince him, and after that we know what happens. Daksha's head gets cut off, gets replaced by a goat head, etc. So in that context, Lord Shiva is telling Sati, you know, I'm always engaged in worshipping Lord Vishnu. That's my consciousness. I don't care about anything else. And then he tells her, therefore you should not see your father, although he has given you the body, etc., because they envy me. So Lord Shiva was saying, because Daksha envied his son-in-law, there was no need for the son-in-law and the daughter to go partake in that yajna. Shiva is saying, oh most worshipful one, he has insulted me with cruel words, although I am innocent. And then he chastises Sati. He says, if in spite of this instruction you decide to go neglecting my words, the future will not be good for you. We know what happened, right? Sati decides to perish herself. You are most respectable, and when you are insulted by your relative, this insult will immediately be equal to death. So he gives her the warning. He's saying, if you go, this will happen. You will be insulted and you will not be able to tolerate it. And as a result, Sati takes her own life. So coming back to what is devotion in the Shuddha Sattva state, going back to chapter 14. Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. So we are going back to chapter 14. What is Krishna saying? One who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances at once, transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. What is Shuddha Sattva? Anybody who is practicing Krishna consciousness is understood to be pure in his original constitutional position. This state of existence is called Shuddha Sattva, which means that it is transcendental to the material quality.
Mataji, small request. Which sloka it is in 14th chapter, Mataji?
1426.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you. Sorry for the disturbance.
Hare Krishna. So we'll stop here.